Sometimes a single structure can change everything. On the Blue Nile River, there's this massive dam. And believe me, it's way more than just a wall of concrete. This project is fundamentally reshaping the power, the economy, and the politics of an entire region. We're diving into the story of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. So, to really get a handle on its impact, you first have to understand the sheer scale of what we're talking about here. This isn't just a big project, it's a true giant, both in its physical size and what it means for the nation. Okay, let's talk money. We're looking at a price tag of around $5 billion. Now, for a developing nation like Ethiopia, that is a monumental investment. It's basically a massive bet on their own future, and get this, it was largely financed by their own people. And something this big doesn't just pop up overnight. From the very first blueprint to the turbines finally spinning, this thing has been in the works for a staggering 14 years. That's a whole generation of effort poured into its construction. And this, right here, is the core of the issue. For Ethiopia, the country that built it, it's an incredible national achievement. But for its neighbors downstream, it's a source of some serious anxiety. Just look at that output. Over 15,700 gigawatt hours a year. That's not just enough to light up all of Ethiopia. It's enough to export a huge surplus and turn the country into a major energy player in East Africa. So for Ethiopia, this dam is about so much more than just keeping the lights on. It's literally designed to be the engine for a complete economic transformation. And the government has a crystal clear vision for how this is going to work. It's a four-part strategy. And every single step is fueled by the power coming from this one dam. First up, it's about fueling their own growth. See, Ethiopia's industrial sector is absolutely booming, but its need for energy is growing even faster. Think about that for a second. A 40% increase in energy needs every single year. That's just incredible. And the GERD? Well, it's designed to meet that massive demand head on. The second goal is all about revenue, and the numbers here are pretty staggering. The dam could bring in an extra $1 billion a year just from selling electricity. To put that into perspective, that's more than a tenth of what the country currently makes from all its other exports combined. Third, all this cheap energy is attracting entirely new and, let's be honest, pretty power-hungry industries. Who would have guessed? Ethiopia is now becoming a new hotspot for Bitcoin mining. We're talking dozens of international companies setting up shop to tap into this abundant new power source. And finally, and this is probably the most important part for its own people, the goal is universal access to power. Right now, half of Ethiopia's 130 million people, that's over 65 million citizens, mostly in rural areas, still live completely without electricity. The money from the dam is meant to build the infrastructure to finally get them connected. But of course, a project this massive is never just a local story. This river doesn't just stop at Ethiopia's border. And that's exactly where the hope starts to turn into fear, creating a major point of tension in the region. For the countries downstream, especially Egypt, which relies on the Nile for the vast majority of its fresh water, this dam isn't seen as a symbol of progress. It's seen as a potential threat to their very survival. So you'd think they would have talked this all out, right? Well, the diplomatic track has been a long and pretty frustrating road. They all agreed to negotiate way back in 2015, but since then, the talks have stalled over and over again. Even with big players like the US and Saudi Arabia stepping in, they just haven't been able to hammer out a binding deal on how to actually operate this thing. And this slide really gets to the heart of the impasse. On one side, you have Ethiopia insisting it has no intention of harming its neighbors and that it's open to negotiating. But on the other side, Egypt feels the threat is so real, so existential, that it's taking the issue all the way to the UN Security Council. This one number is really at the center of all the fear. 74 billion cubic meters of water. I mean, it's hard to even wrap your head around that scale. That's how much water the reservoir behind the dam has already captured, all while there's no agreement in place. And if you're sitting in Cairo, that's 74 billion cubic meters that you saw as yours that didn't flow down the Nile. So all of this has left the entire region in a very tense, very unresolved situation. And this is pretty much where we are today. In Ethiopia, the turbines are spinning, generating electricity and a whole lot of economic hope. But for its neighbors downstream, that very same project is generating diplomatic friction and a deep, deep sense of fear. Ultimately, the The story of this dam leaves us with a fundamental question, one that's being asked in river basins all over the world. As resources get more and more scarce, how do we manage the water that connects us without letting it be the very thing that tears us apart?